Okay, we want to go to our next panel. We've got Chief Henry Stawinski. He's the police chief for suburban Prince George's County. And also I've got Don Bridges, president of the National Association of School Resource Officers. Chief, I want to start with you. What do we need to protect our students? Not 6 months from now, not 6 weeks from now, but come Monday when they go to school. How do we better protect our kids?
Well, Bruce, I'll respond thusly, and I want to begin by thanking you and for the people who have attended this evening for continuing to drive the momentum on this issue. We have taken a comprehensive approach to this problem dating back a few years. The reality, to answer your question directly, is we need community engagement with law enforcement. And I think there's real promise in the proposals that are made regarding legislation, but we know the legislative process takes time. Where we've asked repeatedly is for parents to be nosy about their children's habits on social media, to understand fundamentally what's going on with that circle of friends, to ask those kinds of questions, and then where you have those concerns, whether you're a young person or a parent, contact law enforcement. And the reality is, we've had more than 40 threats made against our schools in Prince George's County since Parkland. We've investigated every one of them to resolution. No one was in a position to actually carry out that threat, but we're committed to ensuring that the conversation isn't about what you do once a gun gets into that school. The conversation has to be about preventing that gun from getting into school in the first place. And that's where myself, the leadership nationally, amongst chiefs of police and amongst school resource officers, is really beginning to gain more momentum. And again, I want to ensure that we focus on the prevention end, not just what to do when the bad thing begins.
Chief, do you also find that people are excited, they're tuned in, they're focused immediately after one of these shootings, but eventually people go back to their own?
Well, I'd like to just make a comment in aid of the young lady who was here first. You know, my concern is that we're at a place where unless there's a dozen or 17 or 49 or 53, somehow that's not coming to our attention. But the reality is that before Parkland, we had more than a dozen of these events in our country. And as I said to our leaders on Capitol Hill about 2 weeks ago, it's an insult to the dignity of our nation that our children are attending school in fear. But the solutions to that are much broader than simply legislative. It's about community engagement, it's about relationships, it's about conversations, it's about reporting those concerns and fears and letting professionals at every level of law enforcement engage, investigate, and again, most importantly, prevent.
Okay, if you guys have questions for the chief, you know, send them up this way. I want to go to John Bridges now, president of the National Association of Resource Officers. It seems to me there are two conversations that are going on in the country right now. One is over here that has to do with weapons of mass destruction and what we're going to outlaw and more gun control. And then there's that conversation again, what are we going to do between now and let's say Monday to make sure our schools are safe? It's a more immediate issue. I mean, that's my opinion. So you've got a solution. Well-trained school resource officers.
Well-trained officers that are, I speak for the nearly 15,000 SROs throughout our country. Those SROs are in our nation's schools day in and day out, and they are teaching, mentoring, and protecting kids. And those guys and gals that serve as SROs, they love the kids, and they're up to the challenge of working to ensure safety of students within our schools.
But Don, what's the background of an SRO? Are these off-duty police officers? Are they retired police officers? Are these military personnel just coming off the battlefield? Are these teachers?
Absolutely not. These are fully sworn police officers that have graduated from the academy, so they're coming into our area schools with a whole lot of police department training. And what my association does is we provide training to school resource officers that are unique to schools. We have to make sure that the officers that are assigned to our area schools are acclimated. They know how to go about engaging with young people. And the most important thing that school resource officers do is they establish relationships with kids.
Who pays for the school resource officer? Does that come out of the police department budget? Does that come out of the local budget? Who pays for that?
It depends on your particular area. Some areas do a 50-50 cost split. Some Police departments are funded fully. But I can tell you that the SRO concept within this area of the country has been around since 1997. Okay. And then we have been in our area schools, and most people have never heard of the SROs because they're in the schools doing an outstanding job. And then most of the young people here, they would tell you that they're in schools that have police officers in them, and most of those relationships are very, very solid.
And just about everybody is crediting that school resource officer at that school in Southern Maryland from keeping that incident, which 2 people were shot, from escalating. The shooter was stopped there in his tracks. Reese?
I want to thank law enforcement as well as the representative of the SROs for being a part of this dialogue. I actually want to throw it out to the audience. Does anybody have a question for law enforcement? Yeah? Okay. No? We got one here? There you go.
No.
He said, wait. Yep.
So like, how can you say that like being nosy about social media is the issue when like if you're saying erotic things or on social media, clearly you have like there's something else going on. Like before it even gets to social media, it could be mental health or it could be an issue at home. Like how there's plenty of random things said on the internet. Like a bunch of people wrote in Harambe in the last election. Like plenty of stupid stuff is said on the internet. How is that supposed to be like? How is that our one defense for gun is in school?
Well, let's be clear. There's not a single defense. This is a multidisciplinary problem. It engages law enforcement. It engages school administration. It engages social services, youth and family services. Where we've had great success, however, is when parents bring to our attention things that are copied, pasted, and forwarded into the community, and then those parents, very often the ones who report to us that someone is threatening to come into a school and do that school harm. That's where we can launch that investigation, we intervene, and we prevent that from happening in the first place. Some of those things that you're talking about are indicative of other problems, but where we find that, we're then able to collaborate with other components of government to provide services that may lead to a better resolution for that person's concerns or problems. And at the end of this, we make absolutely certain that we don't find ourselves mourning more students. And my one concern is that as we see more of this, we'll begin to become desensitized to it and assume, well, that can't happen here. And I think the students from Parkland have made a point of saying it can happen.
Okay, Chief, thanks. Reese, you got
Chief Stawinski,
somebody else over here?
For law enforcement and the other gentleman, but I am very curious, particularly with people with a background of law enforcement, why is it when the technology exists for smart gun technology, it has not been implemented on the gun industry, which I think speaks to not only mass shootings, but it also speaks to everyday gun violence. If we could implement smart gun technology, not even on just to say let's mandate it, but also to subsidize it, to ask the gun industry to say, hey, listen, if you implement smart gun technology on your gun company, on the gun makers, we will give you tax subsidies to do that. This technology exists. I am curious to know why you think that has not been implemented as of yet.
So I'll answer this in 2 parts. The first part is almost 2 years ago, I was asked by the Bureau of Justice Assistance to sit in on a forum about that very topic. And that is promising technology, but it's not to the point where it can be implemented uniformly and can be effective. So that's one part, but it's a prospective solution. And what Bruce asked me at the beginning of this, what are we going to do about Monday? My concern is that, yes, that's a good way for us to look prospectively, but at the end of the day, what I'm advocating for is for us to be engaged, to contact law enforcement with concerns, and work to prevent, because there's a lot of guns out there already that are never going to have smart technology, and we have to balance our concerns.
Okay. Reese, you got a young man there?
Another young man from Banneker.
Hi, I'm Zindy James. I'm from Banneker with Marienberg Youth Leadership Institute. So you said that there's money being funded for SROs, but so where is that coming in DC? Because I know at my schools and other schools, there aren't police trained officers in the building with us. So where is that money actually going to?
Well, you have to identify the money. That's one of the things we were talking about. That was my question. Thanks for backing me up on that. Where is the money coming from? Who's going to pay for it? We talked to the president of the St. Mary County Commissioners, okay? Mr. Guy, and he said that while they are funding SROs in every single high school in the county, they can't fund any more SROs. They don't have the budget. They can't put metal detectors in the school, which might have caught that gun coming in, because they don't have the budget. So that's my question. Where does the money come from? Now, having said that, it's either going to come locally or from the state or from the federal government.
Right. Yes.
You got to demand the money.
Hey, Bruce.
We got the money.
The question was actually, where's the money going? The money that had been allocated for the SROs that aren't present in schools such as his.
You're sure they've allocated money for an SRO in your building?
He said there's money being funded for SROs throughout the city. You said there's 50,000, correct?
Let me offer.
Being in the U.S. So where are they actually going to? Like, is it select high schools? Like, is it not for every high school to have the same opportunity and the same prevention for guns, like these mass shootings or shootings in general?
The assignment of the SROs, that is a jurisdictional thing. So it's going to be up to your local government based on where you are. And one of the things that I've seen is we have to be advocates for those programs. We have to fight for those programs. We have to let our elected officials know that this is a priority and this is something that we want.
Okay, hold on a second. Keep your hands up, because we've got people over here who can answer your questions, I'm sure of that. This is Ed Burrows, the guy who just took my chair. He's a Prince George's County School Board member, right?
That's right.
Okay. Mike Durso, are you still president of the Montgomery County Board of Education?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm trying to move my cards. Is it Anna Smith? Okay, thank you very much. Interim Deputy Mayor for Education of DC Schools. Mr. Durso, if I can talk to you. Mike Durso was principal of Wilson Senior High School in DC. He's been principal of Springbrook High School in Montgomery County, so he knows both city and suburbs. And now he's an elected official. He's president of the school board. What is needed to protect our kids come Monday?
Well, you know, we were talking coming out here that unfortunately parents and community want guarantees that we cannot give them. That does not mean we can't continually upgrade what we're doing in terms of SROs, in terms of other measures, but and it's going to sound like a cop-out, which it's not. It's not only a school problem. I think all of us have a stake in this.
They're asking for guarantees that we can't give them. That is incredibly honest. I mean, and it's scary at the same time. Can you take that question? What can we do right now to protect our kids?
I think, echoing what Mike said, it is about all of us having a role to play. I think here in the district, we're really fortunate that we have a mayor who has always been on the right side of gun control, and we have a lot of resources in place. As we think of school resource officers to the student from Banneker, DC Public Schools partners closely with Metropolitan Police Department to make sure that we have officers deployed around our schools. But we also work closely with the Department of Transportation, with WMATA, Metro Transit Police, community organizations, because we know that it is the safety in our communities as well as our schools that is what's necessary.
Anybody up here in favor of arming trained teachers? Anybody? No. Show of hands. Okay, wait. Who's opposed to arming teachers? Show of hands. Okay, all right, let's move on. Okay. My question becomes this. Do we have school resource officers highly trained, armed in Montgomery County schools?
We do. We are, all of our 25 high schools, not all of our middle schools. I was telling Mr. Burrows on the way out, former SRO at Springbrook, where I was, and actually works now in your county since he's retired, was so good. I can remember cases where gang members who he knew would tip him off as to things that were happening. He had a relationship with the kids that was so good that they would bring information to him. So it's hard to think of something that's better than a well-trained, well-relationed SRO.
What about DC?